Do you know that when you crack open a pack of bacon at the supermarket, the pork inside might have spent more time crossing oceans than it spent growing on a farm? You grab it from the shelf. The packaging promises you Australian quality. The brand name is familiar, trusted, part of your breakfast ritual since childhood. You assume you are buying from Australian pigs raised on Australian soil, but flip the label over. On some of Australia's biggest selling bacon packs, you will see words like "Made in Australia from X% Australian ingredients," where that X can be surprisingly low. The rest is pork imported from intensive farming systems overseas in places like Denmark, the Netherlands, and North America, where animals are typically kept in much more confined conditions than most Australians realize. And the preservative keeping that pork pink and shelf-stable is usually sodium nitrite, a curing salt that can form carcinogenic nitrosamines when processed meat is cooked and digested. I spent 3 weeks tracking ingredient lists, ownership records, supply chain documentation, and peer-reviewed research on processed meat additives. What I uncovered reveals why your family's breakfast might be more harmful than you realized, and why your grocery spending is quietly funding foreign corporations instead of Australian farming communities. Let us step back for a moment. Bacon is breakfast. It is the smell that gets kids out of bed on Saturday morning. It is the sound of sizzle and the taste of salt and smoke. We grow up thinking bacon is bacon. Pork, salt, thyme, traditional, safe, ours. But something has shifted. The Australian bacon industry has been consolidated into the hands of a few very large corporations. Labeling rules mean that a package stamped "Made in Australia" can still contain mostly imported meat, as long as the processing happened here. Cost-cutting means that real slow smoking has often been replaced with chemical curing that uses nitrite salts, the same kind of preservative linked in research to higher bowel cancer risk when eaten regularly. And global supply chains mean that many Australian pig farmers are being priced out of their own market. You walk into your supermarket bacon aisle thinking you have choices, but much of the bacon there is not really different. It is the same imported pork, the same chemical preservatives, the same small group of corporate owners, just wearing different Australian labels. This is not about one bad brand. It is about a system designed to look local while depending heavily on foreign meat and additives. Because what you are about to discover will change how you approach that breakfast plate. Number 1 is the brand that sits in more Australian fridges than any other, and its ownership will surprise you. Number 1. Primo bacon. Primo is everywhere. It is the bacon your parents bought. The bacon at the servo. The bacon you grab without reading, because the yellow and gold packaging is so familiar, it feels like home. Primo has been positioning itself as Australia's bacon for so long that many shoppers assume it is Australian-owned and based on Australian pork. But Primo is owned by JBS, a multinational meat processing corporation headquartered in Brazil. JBS is one of the largest meat processors on Earth. When a Brazilian-controlled company owns your breakfast brand, a lot of your purchasing power flows straight out of Australia, not into the pockets of local farmers. Now look at what is actually in many Primo packs. The ingredient list typically reads something like pork, water, salt, sugar, preservative, sodium nitrite, code 250, smoke flavor, antioxidant. On some products, the origin statement notes that the pork may be sourced from various countries, including North America and Europe, with only a minority of the total content counted as Australian. In other words, the main ingredient in the Australian-looking pack can be imported pork. Consumer reviews often describe Primo bacon as watery. People report that when cooked, the rashers shrink dramatically and release a lot of liquid and white scum in the pan. Many describe the flavor as bland compared to bacon they remember from years past. So on the surface, Primo promises Australian breakfast tradition. Underneath, it often delivers imported pork, nitrite curing and profits directed to an overseas parent company. If Primo has been your family's default choice, you may have been unknowingly supporting a foreign corporation and eating pork that did not come from Australian farms. And if you think switching to a different brand name fixes this, number 2 reveals an uncomfortable truth about premium labels. Number 2. Lilydale Bacon. Lilydale presents itself as a premium Australian poultry brand. Chicken, turkey, and small goods. The branding emphasizes heritage, free range, and quality. Many Australians assume Lilydale bacon would naturally be sourced from Australian pork, given the company's image. But Lilydale is part of a large national poultry group, not a small independent pig farmer. For its processed pork products, you still have to read the fine print. On the back of pack, some Lilydale-branded hams and bacons specify that the pork is sourced from various countries, or use wording like "made in Australia from imported and local ingredients." Like most mainstream bacons, many of these products also contain sodium nitrite, preservative 250. The price point is premium, suggesting quality. But in terms of origin and preservation methods, you can still be looking at a mixture of imported pork and nitrite curing, very similar to cheaper brands. What makes this particularly confusing is that Lilydale's fresh poultry products are genuinely promoted as Australian-sourced. Consumers naturally assume the bacon follows the same standard. It does not always do so. On the surface, the Lilydale name suggests consistent Australian sourcing across the entire range. Underneath, the bacon still needs to be checked line by line, just like any other supermarket pack. And if premium brands can be importing, number 3 shows how even supermarket home labels can quietly rely on foreign pork. Number 3. Coles Bacon. Coles markets its home brand bacon as value. You walk past rows of Coles-branded bacon thinking, budget-friendly, supermarket-controlled, straightforward. The assumption is that supermarket labels, while basic, are at least transparent. But Coles bacon products vary widely in their sourcing, and you have to read the origin line carefully. Some packs state things like, "made in Australia from at least X% Australian ingredients." When that X is low, it tells you that most of the pork itself is imported, even though the curing and packing happened here. Like almost all conventional bacons, Coles home brand bacon uses sodium nitrite as preservative 250. Nutrition panels often show around 900 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium per 100 grams, extremely high. Australian health organizations warn that processed meats like bacon, especially when eaten frequently, are linked with higher risks of bowel cancer and heart disease. So on the surface, the Coles label suggests a simple, transparent product from your trusted supermarket. Underneath, it can still be mostly imported pork, chemically preserved and very salty, engineered for shelf life rather than health. If you have chosen Coles bacon to save money, you may actually be paying full price for meat that has traveled a very long way. And if supermarket home brands are importing, number 4 shows how even premium range supermarket bacon can follow the same pattern. Number 4. Woolworths Bacon Ranges. Woolworths has several own-brand bacons, including cheaper lines and premium-style ranges. The packaging on the higher-priced products suggests careful sourcing and higher standards. Many consumers pay more, believing they are getting Australian pork and superior quality control. But again, you have to look at the origin and ingredients panel. On the back of pack, some Woolworths-branded bacons use wording like "made in Australia" from X% Australian ingredients. Too key if that X is well below 100, it means a large proportion of the pork was imported. Like Coles, Woolworths bacons generally use preservative 250, sodium nitrite, as the curing agent. Consumer reviews often describe these supermarket bacons as thin, watery, and prone to shrinking dramatically when cooked, just like cheaper rivals. The premium price tag does not automatically translate to better pork sourcing or gentler preservation methods. On the surface, the branding and higher price suggest you are upgrading to better quality. Underneath, you may still be buying imported pork with the same nitrite curing and high salt content. And if both major supermarket chains are importing at scale, number 5 shows how discount retailers take cost-cutting to its logical extreme. Number 5, Aldi bacon. Aldi has built its entire business model on being the cheapest option. Their bacon sits in the fridge at prices that seem almost impossible, several dollars below many competitors. This price is only achievable by sourcing very cheap pork on global commodity markets. Aldi packs often highlight value rather than origin. Depending on the product, the fine print may show that the pork is imported and that the product is made in Australia from imported ingredients, or similar wording. Like other mass-market bacons, Aldi bacons commonly use sodium nitrite, preservative 250, and high levels of salt. Very low shelf prices usually mean there is little room for more expensive, slower traditional curing methods or premium local pork. On the surface, Aldi bacon represents unbeatable value. Underneath, you are almost certainly eating imported, heavily processed pork preserved in the standard chemical way. And if the big retailers and brands all look similar, number 6 shows the only bacon category that has really started to shift the system. But most Australians do not realize it exists. Number 6. Nitrite-free and Australian heritage bacon, the overlooked alternative. While Primo, Lilydale, Coles, Woolworths, and Aldi dominate supermarket shelf space with imported, chemically preserved bacon, a small but growing category of Australian-made, nitrite-free bacon exists, and most shoppers never see it. Some smaller producers and independent butchers have started curing bacon using traditional dry curing methods or natural alternatives like celery extract instead of added sodium nitrite. These products are typically made from Australian pork, cured without added synthetic nitrite, or with much lower, naturally derived levels. More expensive than mass-produced imported bacon, found in independent grocers, farmers' markets, or butcher shops rather than in the main supermarket bacon wall. Your local butcher might make bacon in-house from Australian pork, with a very short ingredient list: pork, salt, maybe a little sugar and spice, and genuine wood smoke. But most shoppers never ask, because they assume the supermarket has already shown them all the options. On the surface, the supermarket bacon aisle looks diverse, with different brands and price points. Underneath, it is a consolidated market where nearly all the volume is foreign-owned, import-heavy, and nitrite-cured. The truly different options exist, but they are pushed to the margins. The pattern hiding in plain sight. Let us connect what we have seen. Primo, owned by a Brazilian-headquartered giant, using pork that can be sourced from overseas and cured with sodium nitrite. Lilydale, a premium poultry brand whose bacon still needs its origin line checked carefully, and which also relies on nitrite curing in many products. Coles, home brand bacon, where the back of pack may show a relatively low Australian ingredients percentage and standard nitrite and salt levels. Woolworths, own brands positioned as both budget and premium, but again often using imported pork and preservative 250. Aldi, very low-priced bacon built on imported commodity pork and conventional nitrite curing. Nitrite-free alternatives, often 100% Australian pork and more traditional curing, but harder to find and more expensive. Different brands, same system. A system where Australian consumers often believe they are buying local bacon, but are actually buying pork from overseas factory-style farms processed in Australian plants. A system where nitrite-cured processed meat, classified by the World Health Organization as a cause of bowel cancer when eaten regularly, remains the default. A system where Australian pig farmers struggle to compete with imported commodity pork. And a system where retail consolidation makes it hard for small, genuinely different bacon producers to win space on the shelf. Why this matters for your health. In 2015, the World Health Organization's Cancer Agency classified processed meat, including bacon, as a Group 1 carcinogen, meaning there is strong evidence it increases bowel cancer risk in humans. Australian cancer organizations explain that regularly eating processed meats like bacon and ham raises bowel cancer risk, and that cutting back is one way to reduce that risk. One of the mechanisms scientists focus on is sodium nitrite. When nitrite-cured meat is cooked and digested, it can form nitrosamines, compounds that damage DNA. Some studies have linked higher nitrite intake with increased risks of bowel cancer, prostate cancer, and possibly other conditions. In response to this evidence, European regulators have moved to tighten the rules on nitrite use in cured meats, reducing permitted levels and encouraging alternative methods. Australia's standards have not yet fully matched those stricter limits. So many bacons on Australian shelves can still contain relatively high nitrite levels by international comparison. Now let me tell you what you can actually buy instead. If you love bacon, and most Australians do, you do not have to give it up altogether. You just need to make different choices about where it comes from and how it is preserved. Option 1. Local butcher cured bacon. Ask your independent butcher if they make their own bacon from Australian pork. Questions to ask. Where does the pork come from? How is it cured? Do you use added sodium nitrite or just salt and thyme? Many good butchers will be happy to explain their process, and some will even cure to order. The price will be higher than supermarket bacon, but you know exactly where it came from and what is in it. Option 2. Farmers market producers. At farmers markets, look for small producers selling bacon cured from Australian pork, with clear labeling and short ingredient lists. You can speak directly to the person who made it and ask about nitrites, smoking, and feed. Option 3. Online Australian bacon producers. A small but growing group of Australian bacon makers sell online and ship nationally. They focus on Australian pork, traditional curing, and transparent ingredients. Search for terms like Australian dry cured bacon or nitrite-free bacon, and look for producers who publish their ingredient lists and sourcing. Option 4. Cure your own bacon at home. This is far simpler than most people think. You need 1 piece of pork belly or loin, salt, a little sugar, optional spices such as black pepper, juniper, coriander, thyme, or bay leaf. The method: mix the salt, sugar, and spices into a cure. Rub the cure all over the pork, massaging it in. Place the pork in a bag or non-reactive container and refrigerate for 7 to 10 days, turning every other day. Rinse off the excess cure and pat the meat dry. Air dry in the fridge until the surface feels tacky. Smoke gently if you like, or leave it unsmoked. Cool. Slice and store. No added synthetic nitrite required. No mystery preservatives. Just salt, thyme, and possibly smoke. The way bacon was made for generations. Option 5. If you must buy supermarket bacon, choose better labels. If you cannot avoid the supermarket wall, at least, look for packs that clearly state they use Australian pork. Check the Australian ingredients percentage and aim for 100% where possible. Choose products that do not list preservative 250 if you can find them. If nitrite-free is not available, treat nitrite-cured bacon as an occasional food, not a daily staple. Final message and call to action. Australian breakfast culture has drifted from something simple and local to something industrial and global. From small farms raising pigs on Australian soil, to imported pork from overseas confinement systems, from salt and smoke curing, to chemical preservation that cancer agencies now warn about when eaten regularly, from money staying in Australian communities, to profits flowing to multinational corporations. We stopped asking where our bacon came from because the branding looked familiar and the price seemed right. But every time you and I read the Australian content percentage, ask our butcher where the pork was raised, and choose nitrite-free or Australian-cured alternatives when we can, we send a quiet signal. We signal that Australian consumers are willing to know the truth and willing to pay for bacon that reflects our values: local farming, animal welfare, and health. So here is the simple action I would love you to try after this video. Next time you buy bacon, ask yourself 3 questions. Is this bacon made from Australian pork or imported pork? Does it contain sodium nitrite, preservative 250, or is it cured another way? Can I trace where the pork came from? If the answers are imported, yes, it contains sodium nitrite, and no, I cannot trace it, then put that bacon back. Walk to your local butcher or farmer's market instead. Ask for Australian pork cured with a simple, transparent process. Or commit to curing one batch yourself at home. If this video changed how you think about breakfast, hit like and subscribe so we keep exposing the truth about Australian supermarket products that are not what they seem. Tell me in the comments, did you know most supermarket bacon could be imported? Have you found a source of truly Australian bacon? What is the next breakfast staple you want us to investigate together? Your family deserves bacon made from Australian pork by producers you can name, not anonymous imported meat dressed up in Australian marketing. Stay aware, stay sharp, and protect your plate.